hand over to Ben.
Thank you, Julie. Well, I'm not going to keep you too long either. I just wanted to say hi to anyone new that's tuned in today, and hi to, I guess, those that know me. But it's been a little while since we've had a webinar. A few things have probably changed since we last had a webinar. The ROI branch was re-established about 3 years ago, and about 6-8 months ago, we had a new committee installed with yours truly elected or voluntold, I think it's Julie's buzzword, voluntold to be the chairperson of the Ireland branch. So we have a new committee, myself as chairperson, and we're just trying to get things back up and going again. We used to have great face-to-face meetings. We used to hold them out in the R&Li's offices in Swords, which went really well. We used to have meetings and we used to have discussions with guests like today, but unfortunately due to COVID that all went by the wayside. We did have webinars running during the start of COVID, which went well, but I think a lot of people were webinared out during COVID, myself included. So we're just starting to get back up and running again. We'll start off with webinars again, then please God in the near future we'll get back to face-to-face meetings again. So without further ado, Stephen from Free Falcon has kindly agreed to give us a webinar today on their fall protection system. As we all know, falls from heights remain the biggest leading cause of fatalities in the workplace, and trying to have solutions for this isn't easy. So it's up to us as safety professionals to keep an eye on new technology and new systems that are out there. And this is a relatively new system that's available in construction. I've seen it out inside, I've seen it working, and it works really, really well. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Stephen.
Thank you very much, Ben. Just to give you an idea what my plan is this afternoon, I'm going to give you a quick run through the setup and safety check on the Free Falcon, and then I'll run through a fairly short presentation, giving you some information about the unit itself, how it works, why it was designed, just a bit about the history of the company and that sort of thing. That should punch us in, I suppose, 30 to 40 minutes, and at that point I'm happy to take any questions that Julie will fire across to me. So feel free as we go through to send those questions through, and I'll deal with them at the end. First of all, actually before I do kick on, I'll just mention to you, I would normally have an assistant to do this, but Ben has alluded to COVID issues, and essentially COVID has wiped us out this week. So you'll have to, I'm afraid, bear with me as I actually speak and do the setup here as well. So if you just bear with me. There's a hole here for pumping the device up, and the top of the hole is a screwdriver. The second of the device, there are actually 4 decals on the device itself, numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. Very simply, it's point 1. You put the screwdriver in at about a 45-degree angle and lever this back. That will reset the fall indicator. Now, what I have done there, inside that arm, we have one of these. That's a cradle. If you can see the recesses on the face, there are 6 of them, one top and bottom, and it's the same on the other side. On the arm, there are spring-mounted ball bearings. When this is pulled back into position, the bearings lock that in place. Then, in the event of a fall, that will jerk the cradle out of position and activate the hydraulic system. So point 1 is to reset that. Point 2 is to close the hydraulic valve. Otherwise, I'm going to be pumping hydraulic oil in this all day. There we go. Point 3 is to check this cable. This is the Bowden cable. That cradle that I showed you, there's a cable that runs inside the arm, out here, down to the hydraulic system down here. So what we need to do is check if there's no more than 3 mil of play in that. And this is a brand new machine, so it's actually 0 play in that, but you're allowed up to 3 mil. This is where I'm going to have to ask you to really bear with me. because I need to pump the device up. This usually takes about 1 minute, and this is where I would normally have someone younger and fitter than I am to do this for me. As I'm pumping this up, just to mention to you, there's an arrow on the bottom of the arm and an arrow on the base. And what we need to do is line the arrows up. Previously, we had a pressure gauge on these, and some of the older models still have the pressure gauge on. But it's actually quite difficult when you're doing this to stop and look at the pressure gauge, etc. So what we need to do is just line those two arrows up. Essentially, this arm needs to be vertical. There we go. As they say about this part of the world, I'm an old geezer, nearly 60, and I can pump that up fairly quickly. So the younger guys on site, if that's not an ageist comment, which it probably is, apologies for that, but the guys on site will be a lot younger and fitter than I am, so they'll be able to do that very quickly. Now, point 4, and this is crucial, that locking pin. As things stand at the moment, that will not rotate. But if I lift that locking pin, the arm swings very easily. It's a very, very, very loose, very free-flowing rotation that you can see from the overswing. When I stop, it swings on. So that works particularly well. That's the setup. The setup itself is only required once a week. It's good practice at the end of the week to lower the device. Essentially, no one's going to die because of it if you don't, but because it's just simply good practice to take the pressure off the hydraulic system for maintenance and for the longevity of the unit itself. That setup, as I say, if you're doing it on site and not talking through it as I was, you're probably looking minute and a half to do the setup, and that's only once a week. What you must do daily, though, if you're an operator, is do your safety check. Pop this back in. In here, the cylinder on the back of the arm, there is a manual. That manual is an AFI version of the A4 manual that will be kept in the office. There's 2 manuals close with every unit. In the back of this, there's a step-by-step guide how to do your safety check. But to be frank, it's so simple, you really won't need this to do the safety check. If I show you this initially, this is the first thing I'm going to be checking on as part of the safety check. This is what's underneath the Free Falcon. And this is a non-slip rubber resin. There's 12 of these pads underneath. And the first thing I need to do is go around and check that those 12 pads are in position, all safe and secure. Check the lifting eyes. Each one of those lifting eyes is certified to 4 kilonewtons. The whole device weighs 450 kg. So actually one of those lifting eyes could almost lift this on its own, but essentially for level lifting, we've got 4 of them on it, so it can be lifted horizontally on the deck. We then come up, check the hydraulics, check there's no hydraulic leaks. There shouldn't be hydraulic leaks, but what we have found on occasions in the past, guys have knocked this, they've actually put forks from the forklift in, not tried to lift the device. That's a hydraulic pipe. It won't lift a Free Falcon. So come on up and just check, quick glance at the welds. There's no reason why there should be any issue with the welds. We've never had any issue with the welds in the 6 years these have been produced. But if you're going to be hanging off the end of this device potentially, you want to make sure everything's good to go. We then move to the front end. Quick glance at the cable's okay. Check the flow indicator. Flow rest block, sorry, make sure it's not red flagged. Then the final act is to sign off in this manual that you've carried out your check. It doesn't absolve the companies from any liability or responsibility. But it's good that the operator themselves take on some responsibility for checking their equipment safe. If they find a fault when they're doing any of those checks, they need to straight away call their supervisor foreman in, and the unit's taken out of commission until the fault's rectified. The next thing to show you is how easy it is to move. Just literally one person on a pallet truck. It's lifted onto deck initially with a crane, and once it's on deck, it's all very simple and straightforward. One person on a pallet truck, you're not waiting for crane time. It is essential to remember, whenever I'm carrying out my training for the operators, the forklift must not be left underneath, and you must not be connected to the free falcon when you're actually moving it. We don't want guys getting distracted, keeping pushing over the fall edge, this going over the fall edge while it's there attached to it. So it's important to disconnect and remove the pallet truck at the end. Just show you it being triggered. You'll remember I mentioned this locking pin. This is what allows the arm to rotate. Now, when the device is triggered, you'll find this arm will move backwards and this arm will move downwards. As this arm moves backwards, there's a plate here which will come down on that locking pin and force it into position. Now, I know you can't see obviously on the camera, but there are holes the whole way around that, and every one's beveled. So every time this device is activated, this locking pin will find a hole and will lock the arm in place. Just step on the screen here to do this for you. That's the device activated. You see now, that arm will no longer turn. The arm drops for two reasons. It drops to lower the center of gravity, make the device more stable. I'll come to that when I'm doing the presentation through PowerPoint shortly. But additionally to that, because the arm locks, it won't rotate to allow the fall victim to fall even further by swinging round in line with the fall victim, and that will minimize swing fall. Swing fall is now impossible to alleviate, but we can certainly minimize it, and that's what that does. Now, in this situation, we've developed a situation here where, in theory, there's a fall victim hanging over the edge. We do also have a rescue device to facilitate that rescue, and again, I'll deal with that. There's a video that I'm going to talk you through as we work our way through this PowerPoint presentation. That's the end of the live bit. I'm just going to share a screen with you here, folks, and just take you through the wee presentation. Hopefully you'll still be able to hear me okay. You may see some references in here to Fall Pro. This device is known basically everywhere outside Europe as a Fall Pro. We've got a lot of these devices in the States. We're hopefully going to have them in Canada and Australia very shortly. There's an export going to Chile. It really is a worldwide product, but in Europe it's known as the Free Falcon. Everywhere else in the rest of the world it's known as Fall Pro. That's purely down to a branding issue and patent issues. But I'm going to take you through this. I'm the general manager. Stephen Savage has already been introduced. I'm the general manager of Free Falcon, also the senior training instructor. A bit about the company. Fall Pro's creator knew only too well how dangerous working on formwork and precast concrete slabs could be over his 30 years experience in the construction industry. He actually owned one of the biggest construction companies in Germany. Although there are safety solutions for working at heights, some of these measures were frustrating for many reasons, primarily mobility of these systems and planning procedures that were necessary for their installation. Masoud, who's designed this, wanted to be able to provide the most comprehensive safety system to protect his staff. After trying everything available in the market without any satisfaction, his frustration led to a light bulb moment and the Fall Pro was instinctively designed. The bit of background to that story, his company was actually doing the formwork on the Mercedes Museum in Germany, and he was being given very tight KPIs with regard to productivity, and he was struggling to meet those whilst meeting the safety KPIs at the same time. He tried all the devices, wasn't doing his job, and ironically, I'm not sure if you have seen Pixar movies, I'm sure many of you have, but at the start there's a lamp that bounces around, jumps onto the eye and squishes the eye of the word Pixar. And that is essentially where he got his light bulb moment from. The design in this is very similar, with a weighted base and two movable hinged arms. There's obviously a lot of engineering that's gone into it as well in the way of hydraulic technology and lever technology, but that's where the initial inspiration came from. Core of the element is that spring and that hydraulic cylinder that I've mentioned to you. The Free Falcon, it can secure almost its weight. In fact, it can secure more than its weight because it can hold 750 kgs. When the system's release force is exceeded, the spring forces the anchor mast into the secured position, which I have just demonstrated for you earlier. Free Falcons can hold 750 kg, which exceeds the value specified in the various certifications. By utilising the mobility of the Fall Pro or Free Falcon, the risks of swing fall are decreased and minimum height can also be reduced. That's the startup position. If you look to the left of the screen, that's the startup. Attached is the fully rotatable 360-degree anchor. The mast is the extension arm, complete with the fall arrestor and safety lifeline. I mentioned that when the arm drops to the secured position, it reduces the center of gravity. And then in the third one, the load's successfully held. Approximately 50% of the vertical transaction force and approximately 50% due to torque. Fall Pro can easily be transported on deck just with a standard pallet truck. There's unrestricted freedom of movement. There's 360-degree rotation, which ensures an optimum working radius of up to 10 meters. Now, we would recommend a 9-meter fall arrest block, and you've got a 1-meter extension on the arm. But the beauty of the Free Falcon is that you can work behind the device, beside the device, or in front of the device when you're attached to it. You don't need other workers to carry decking boards or whatever you may require, tools, hammers, screws, nails. Don't need any of that brought to you. You can fetch that off for yourself. So it's only one guy's required to do all that work. The other thing is it's ready for immediate use. Fall Pro units can be lifted onto site with its 4 load attachment points, which I did mention to you earlier, and it doesn't require anchoring. So therefore, no structural pre-planning is required. There's no sleeves to go into columns. There's no fiddly bits at the end where you're trying to complete the decking around the edge. Maybe you can't reach from other fall protection anchors. You simply move this fall protection anchor to exactly where you need it to be. Top quality materials are used. That combined with the German precision engineering gives the Free Falcon its superb strength and longevity. The Free Falcon unit is simple to use and comprehend, and the mechanics behind its functionality. And it's maximum safety with overhead protection. Due to the overhead attachment, there are no additional danger spots caused by safety lines lying on the ground, presenting trip hazards. Workers, instead of focusing on the safety threats within their work environment, can concentrate on their work activity. Overhead protection also ensures a shorter free fall clearance and therefore is reduced on the falling, weight is therefore reduced on the falling mass or the person, so there's less pressure on the harness. I mentioned the rescue package. I'll just take you through this video. I'll just talk over this as well, if that's okay. Hi, I'm Stephen Savage, just the age in need of rescue. First thing we notice is the groove. First thing we see here is the grooves on the bracket. And on the bracket, there's a long edge and a short edge.
Stephen, we can hear your sound.
Okay, I'll be quiet then.
Okay.
I'll just put that back to the start of the video then, if you can hear my sound. Hi, I'm Stephen Savage, Senior Training Instructor with Rebar in UKR. I'd like to see just how quick and easy the rescue of a fallen worker can be when using our equipment and rescue plan. For the purpose of this simulation, I've created a situation as it would be if a fall had occurred and a worker was suspended over a leading edge in need of rescue. The first thing we notice is the grooved face on the gripper. You'll see how this grips the cable here. On the bracket, we have a long edge and a short edge, and it's important to note that. We then have a pivot pin, which has a button on top that when pressed will retract the two locking bearings at the bottom of the pin and will allow the pin to pass easily through the holes that you've put in line. I mentioned the short edge earlier. We need to make sure it goes closest to the SRL block when we apply the bracket to the cable. We make sure the holes are in line, push the button on top of the pivot pin and slide it through. The next step is to link the hook to the ring as shown here, green to green. We then attach the winch to the cable loop as shown. It's important that it is attached to the loop and not to the block or carabiner. The winch is then used to take the weight off the SRL block. All we want to do here is to take the weight, not actually pull the victim back over the lead edge. It's now safe to unclip the block and reattach it to the rope. Now we simply reverse the winch mechanism using the button shown and lower the casualty safely to the floor below. I hope this proved useful for you, but if you have any questions, please get in touch. Thanks. Okay, everybody. That rescue device is particularly good. As health and safety professionals, you'll be aware harness trauma will set in approximately 12 minutes. Recommended time for rescue is 6 minutes. Using our gear, we can actually carry out the rescue in less than 2 minutes. So it's very, very good and very, very effective at what it does. Hi, I'm Steve. Watching that once is quite sufficient, thank you. Ian Savage. See? New training instructor. Okay. The Free Falcon gives us overhead protection, and it's a low weight and it's fully mobile. We've already addressed some of the issues regarding overhead protection. The fact that it doesn't give you any trip hazards. The low weight means it's very mobile, and as we've already seen, it's moved just by one person on a pallet truck on deck. When on a roof or deck, the minimum load capacity must be 120 kilograms per square meter. And this slide's emphasizing the need that once it's in position, the pallet truck must be removed from the recess. By the way, just as an aside, the Free Falcon can also be lifted using a forklift in the same recess. It's designed for that. Just a quick point regarding overhead protection. If we look here, you can see that there is a free fall distance here. So basically, the victim is going to fall the bulk of his body height before it starts to register with the fall arrest block that he's fallen. So then with that added to the fall arrest distance, If we go to the next screen, you can see with overhead protection, the instant the fall victim falls, it's registering with the fall arrest block. So high level wins over low level every time means that the free fall distance is greatly reduced. That is the system in its entirety. It's the free falcon or fall probe, depending on where you are in the world. We use the ICAR fall arrest system and the PPE safety harness. Now, just to mention the fall arrest system that we supply is slightly different to your standard fall arrest system. Any fall arrest block will work with this, but ours is geared slightly differently, that it won't trigger every time you make a sudden movement when you're attached to it, which allows guys who are working to work with greater freedom, that they're not getting caught and stopped a lot of the time when they make a sudden movement. The difference is, though, and I will just, if you're using a different block, the reaction time is slightly different between fall arrest blocks. So when you're working out your minimum clearance, you've got to adjust that part of the calculation, that part of the formula, the reaction distance for each fall arrest block. But any fall arrest block will work. Obviously, the rules must be followed, and that's the way the manual is designed. I mentioned the daily inspections, the safety check. That's lifted from the logbook, but it's very straightforward. You just work through it, and if there's anything not correct, you just immediately inform your supervisor. At the end of each day, you've got to make yourself, at the start of each day when you've done your check, you've got to sign off that you've done it. And foremen need to take responsibility as well to check that this is being done, because we have had occasions in the past where someone has fallen and they haven't been doing their safety checks. Now, thankfully, everything worked as it should and everything was exactly as it should have been, but it had not been checked for a few days. What the trainer's obliged to do, that's me or whoever else is carrying out the training. Obviously, you've got to supply with all mandatory statutory regulations, technical safety procedures applicable, the training of the personnel, instruction of the personnel at regular interviews regarding all safety regulations affecting the system, to check the knowledge of the personnel. Now, when I'm doing my training, I will do one of two things. I'll either do a visual assessment, asking operators to show me how to do the device, or if we're having to do it in a classroom environment, there's not a device there, I ask them to complete a test based on the PowerPoint presentation that I've taken them through. We also document the training. I will provide the PowerPoint presentation to whoever's organised the training so they can refer back to it in due course, and we issue certificates for whoever has been successfully completed the course. We obtain confirmation by means of signatures and check whether the staff are working in a safe and non-hazardous way. Again, that's prior to the issue of any certificates. The certificate actually lasts for a 4-year period. After a fall, and it's only after a fall, the device must be taken out of action and recalibrated. The forces that anyone's putting through that machine using just their arms are not even approaching the sort of forces that'll go through the unit in the case of a free fall. So after free fall, recalibration must happen. Something there, we don't want the device any closer than 2.5 meters. Now that's from the center of the device. So we would like 1.5 meters from the edge of the device to the leading edge, 2.5 meters from the center. It reduces any risk of trip hazard essentially from the device being too close to the edge, but more importantly, it allows room to effect a rescue using the rescue device in the event of a fall, and they're not having to work around the free falcon itself. To minimise the risk of swing fall, I'm sure many of you will already be aware of this, putting formwork down in a semicircular action rather than going out in a straight line, reduces any risk from swing fall. That's fairly obvious from those two diagrams. Just to mention you as well, we carried out tests for the European certification. There were 3 consecutive tests done, 3 consecutive drops of 150 kilogram weight from 1.5 meters. And the value C was rounded to the nearest 50 millimeters. Now, I'm going to show you a video here of the test itself. The slope was 5 degrees. There was decking release soil on it as well, and the hose was turned onto it. And the device in total over the 3 drops moved 28 millimeters. The first 2 drops are without a fall arrest system. The last one is with a fall arrest system. And that concludes the presentation, ladies and gentlemen. If any of you have any questions for me, feel free, fire them across, and I'll do my very best to answer them.
Okay, so we've had some questions through. The first one is, will this system work on an open rebar where the anti-slip pads could not be used?
Yes, there is an adapter plate available that comes, you can be bought separately actually from the Free Falcon. And now the disadvantage of that is it has to be craned on the rebar. Obviously a pallet truck's not going to work on the rebar. But yes, there's an adapter plate available that comes with it to facilitate working on rebar.
Great, thank you. And the next question, is it good to use while you are underneath the system? Example, system on a roof and operator directly underneath on a balcony.
Sorry, I can't quite follow the question, Julie. Could you run that past me again?
Okay, let me see if is it good to use while you are underneath the system? For example, when the system is on a roof and the operator is directly underneath on a balcony?
Yeah, well, that's precisely the reason why we say if it's being used on a roof or deck, whatever it's been used on, has to have a minimum strength of 120 kgs per square meter. That way it's not going anywhere. It's good practice to make sure, I mean, any edge protect or fall protection system, if you're working near leading edge, it should be clear underneath the leading edge that there's nothing parked there, no vehicles parked there, or no pallets piled up that any potential victim could fall into, minimizing the minimum clearance. So other than that, it's absolutely fine.
I think what the person meant, Stephen, is that if we could have, we're showing the system on the level, so it's on the deck there or it's on the precast slabs that we're installing. I think the query is, can you have it up on the roof and then pass your inertia rail down onto a balcony on the floor below?
No, I wouldn't recommend that at all. Particularly, I mean, it's only approved to, it depends on your roof, obviously. If it's a flat roof, yeah, but I mean, you're working on a balcony below. It's not, I'm saying no, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. If you've got your 10 meter, a 9 meter cable on a 1 meter up, 1 meter on the arm. As long, I mean, the cable's sharp tested, so it should be fine working over a sharp edge. It's not something we would encourage, not something we've looked at, and it's a very good question. It's something I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board on. I'll come back to you on that, Ben, if you could maybe, or if you want to pass me on the details of the questioner, I can get back to them directly.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so the next question. Has the system been used in Republic of Ireland, and does it come with a GA1, a certificate of thorough examination?
Yeah, it has been used. There's a lot of contractors, basically all the main contractors down there have used it at some point in time. It's certified right across Europe. It's not just in Ireland. This thing's certified worldwide. Europe, America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. It's every certification that it could possibly require.
Fantastic, thank you. And then the last question I've got, unless anyone else wants to send some through, has the 6 monthly check to be completed by yourselves, or can an appropriate company within the Republic of Ireland certify it as required?
It has to be completed by ourselves. Well, firstly, it's not a 6 monthly check, it's an annual check. This device, because it's not a lifting device, it's not covered by LOLR. So it's an annual check. Now, the fall arrest block is 6 monthly, but the free falcon itself is 12 monthly. So they're two separate entities. The free falcon, we can certainly do the check for you, but what we can also do, and what I personally recommend, if you were to purchase these, I would recommend that we actually get your guys trained as certified engineers on the free falcon. It only takes 1 or 2. And to be honest, it's not such a big issue in Ireland because we're reasonably local. We're only a couple of hours away from most sites. But if you go beyond that, if I get a call to say there's been a fall, for example, and the device has been taken out of commission, if that's in London, I've got to book flights and get over there. It's going to take me a day or two to get there, get the thing sorted, get everything rechecked and recalibrated the way it should be. If you have your own guys there, you can recalibrate this in about 45 minutes. So the device is only out of commission for 45 minutes rather than waiting a couple of days to get me there. So essentially, no, not random companies can't certify this and can't recalibrate it. We can do it, or we can train your guys to do it themselves. Again, they'll be certified, and that certification would last for a 4-year period.
Okay, we've just had a comment come through saying that LOLR is not applicable here in Republic of Ireland. Any equipment that restrains or fall arrests in Republic of Ireland is 6 monthly.
Okay, that's an education point for me. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, we've got another question. In a rescue situation, will the rescuer be in the all arrest also? Can the winch lift up as well as lower the victim, i.e. water, and then second rescuer needed? I really can't understand that question.
Right, okay.
So
Well,
can you see if you can interpret that?
The winch itself can raise up the victim and lower the victim down. We don't want to raise the victim back up over the fall edge because it can potentially cause more injury. So what we do is we take the strain on the rope, so that the weight is actually acting up through the winch and the rope into the free falcon rather than through the fall arrest block. The fall arrest block is then disconnected and hooked onto the rope. The winch mechanism is then reversed by pushing a button, and we can lower the fall victim safely down to the deck beneath. Now, I am regularly asked, what height can this function at? Well, how high can you work with this? This device is actually designed for saving people on wind turbines. So, and the rope itself isn't contained within the mechanism. The rope comes in a separate bag. Now, it's obviously not just any old rope, it's sharp edge tested, etc., etc. But essentially, if you're working at a height of 300 feet, you need a rope that's 301 feet long. It's as simple as that. And the ropes are available in whatever length you require them. As far as the rescuer is concerned, the rescuer should hook onto something else other than the free falcon. They need to hook onto something, whatever's available, essentially. But I would not recommend hooking onto the free falcon as well. Although that said, I have seen it done, but it's not recommended. It's amazing the number of companies actually that you ask have their rescue plan in place and they say yes. And you ask them what it is and they say, oh, we'll just phone the emergency services. But it could take 20 minutes for the emergency services to turn up. Meanwhile, the fall victim's trapped in a harness. Or they say, we'll get a ladder from somewhere. Or they say, we'll get a cherry picker from somewhere. Well, holding a ladder in place is not really the best way to rescue anyone, particularly if they happen to be injured.
Thank you, Stephen. You did a much better job at answering that question than I did asking it.
I hope I got a grasp of it. That's all I'm thinking.
I think you did. We don't have any more questions. We've just had a comment to say thanks for the information on what looks like a very good system.
Thank you.
Ben, do you have any questions, or do you want to say some closing words before we draw to a conclusion?
I could go on for hours. But as I said at the start, I've seen the system out on site, and I've seen it on the tier one contractors, the Cis and the John Paws and the structure towns of this world are turning over to this system. And the reason why they're going over to this system is because it's adaptable, it's mobile, it's user friendly. It's got a lot of things going for it, you know. So look, I really appreciate your time, Stephen. Hopefully everyone got a little bit of something out today. I'm sure, Stephen, you wouldn't mind us passing on your details if anyone asks.
I'd be very offended if you didn't.
Yeah. And again, thanks very much for your time. But that's
Not at all.
me,
It's been an
Julie.
absolute pleasure.
We'll plan to do it all again in a few weeks' time. When's the next one, Justina? Can you talk? Putting her on the spot.
Someone in April.
Sometime in April. Worry about that in April. But we'll be back again with another one. Hopefully it's interesting as today's.
Let me find the next one is Monday, the 25th of April at 1 p.m.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, well, thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Ben. A copy of the recording will be sent to you with the email after the event, and we hope to upload it onto the YouTube video, onto the YouTube channel. So thank you, everyone, and thanks for attending.
Thank you very much.